All right, my name's Adam Bratt, and I've been working in product and development for the past 10 years. I've worked for a bunch of different firms, from the media side to having my own CRM startup to most recently starting a company called Indio in the insurance space. I moved to Detroit probably 6 years ago or so, and then from Detroit about 2 years ago I moved to Asia for about a year, and then I moved here to San Francisco. And really it was just kind of, I've always wanted to live here. This is the startup mecca. This is where all the tech stuff happens. Isn't necessarily the typical thing that you're going to see with a lot of startups. Mostly people are working with consumers and tech-savvy companies. A lot of startups are selling technology to other startups. Our big problem, though, is that our average user is over the age of 50. Much more difficult. Being a mentor, you just get to tell people what to do, or just kind of give them advice and listen to what they have to say. You can't really tell people what to do when you're a founder. You have to actually figure it out yourself, and you have to, you have to execute, but you also have to, empower your team and get them to do stuff, right? It's a little bit different when you're a mentor and somebody's not necessarily following along the lines and doing everything right. You can kind of yell at them a little bit and say hey guys, you need to get your numbers right next week, and then you don't see them for a whole week, right? When you're working with employees and other people at your company, you have to see them every single day, and it's much more of coaching and kind of figuring out and growing together on things versus just coming in for an hour every week and giving them some ideas and leaving. The difference between remote and local is actually getting more and more and more close. I mean, we have technologies like Slack now, we've got GitHub, we've got Jira, we've got things that keep people updated throughout the day, Google Hangouts. The difference between somebody in the office and somebody remote is getting smaller and smaller. You're never going to have as good of a relationship with people that are remote. I think there's some organizations that have tried to be 100% remote, and that works for very specific cultures and very specific attitudes. But I think for most people, you need to have a little bit of a ground base, but I also think that you can outsource and work with remote people a lot more than most people think. But for ongoing, I think it makes a lot of sense to have a really good relationship with your remote team and view it less as a contractor and just as an employee that's outside of the office. I found Skygate online first, and then actually went to Poland to go meet the team the first year that I was working with them. And I liked what they were doing. It seemed like they were all really good guys that got it. And I was also really impressed with the technical talent in Poland. I think the universities and the way that people are taught development in Poland prepares people more for the real world than a lot of United States universities. I mean, I used to recruit a lot from hackathons, and I'd meet kids that were at MIT and Stanford in their junior year, and they had less experience than one of Chris's interns a lot of times when it came to working with actual real-life problems and solving things. So just seeing that, I was like, yeah, I want to work with these guys, and they understood the business more so than just a typical remote person who is just kind of sitting on the sidelines and waiting for you to send them a task at a time. And we're actually trying to understand the project and figure out how they could actually help, and giving suggestions and new ideas. I've recommended Skygate to a lot of companies in San Francisco. So any of the companies that I work with at 500 startups that need help, I always recommend Skygate to them, because I think it's an easy way for you to scale your team right away, especially when you're a newer startup at an earlier stage and you might not necessarily have as much revenue right now. You can't necessarily afford, $120,000, $150,000 a year for a really good developer in San Francisco. It's a lot easier to find somebody who's remote but is going to care a lot about your idea. And also because at those early stages, you might have to scale up and scale down a lot quicker. If you're hiring somebody, it might take 3 months until you get them scaled up, and then it might take a few more months if you have to offload somebody. And when you're working with a remote team, it's a little bit easier to add additional people or scale back a little bit when you need to. I've been working with remote teams for 5-6 years now, Skygate and a few others, and I've never actually had people come over in person and work alongside the team. I've met people and gone there, visited a few times for different companies, but I've never actually taken the team from where they're at and brought them in locally and worked with them. In the last 4 weeks in San Francisco here, working with the Skygate team one-on-one, has been crazy. Just in terms of both their productivity as well as our productivity, I feel like everybody's throwing ideas around. We're able to move a lot quicker, coming up with a whole new architecture actually for a lot of our app just in the last few weeks here, and actually being able to implement that is something that you're never going to be able to do as easily over the phone. So I think it's something that going forward, I want to make this a process for at Indio and any other companies that I work at in the future, where I'm working with remote developers, where we actually bring them in every few months to actually sit down in the office, kind of get updated on what the most current stuff is in the roadmap, and let everybody kind of realize what the real goals are of the company and see things day to day.
Cool.